losing $896.38 the first month of 2025. Let's get into the recap. So let me pop out of the way so you guys can see everything. We had essentially $900 in the red off 20 trades, although 20 trades, technically speaking, was about half because I have a trade copier that copies trades across one account from a different account. So essentially it takes the trades on two accounts when it's really just based off of one idea. That's how I've been slowly beginning to scale my prop firm experience. I had a $10,000 account. I bought a $25,000 account. The $10,000 account is funded. I'm now trading on the funded $10,000 account, but then it's automatically 2.5xing the size on the $25,000 account. So that's what's going on there. And then a $25,000 account I have that I trade everything that is not stock related. That is not a stock. I will trade on a separate $25,000 account. So the sizing is roughly the same there. But yeah, that's the deal. So 20% win rate, not great. 2.2 average win loss. That is awesome in my opinion. And I'll talk more about these numbers here as we get going into it. So you can kind of see everything across the screen. This is TradeZella. They've added a couple different things to this homepage. There's even the ability to add more widgets now. They've started to allow you to customize your page a bit more, which is pretty cool. I've been using them for now 2.5 years, I'd say, or so. The past 2 years more seriously in terms of tracking. And I've noticed a substantial improvement in my confidence in trading because I just have this data since I've been using them. I'll always leave a link below, but you don't have to use that if you don't want to use it, but it will save you 10%. I still pay for this thing full up every single year. So there you go. But overview, then we'll get into the reports. Hopefully that wasn't super loud. We'll get into the reports, and then we'll dive into a couple of specific trades that I think were the difference in this month. As I speak, I do have open trades, 2 open trades. One is up quite substantially. It's close to the take profit, but it hasn't hit yet. I've moved my stop loss to break even, so that will just be realized in the next month. They have earnings next month on that trade, so I will not hold through earnings, so it will have to get realized in the next week or so. And the other one I think has earnings in March, so it could technically be the whole month. Depends upon if it hits take profit or not, or stop loss before that. We'll see. So we have 2 things going on right now, but with this month, I will say here's kind of like my overall summary. This month was choppy uptrend. We did have some pullbacks, and we did have a little bit of that, which with the way that I trade based off momentum, on a month where we've had a bigger trend that we pull back, tends, you would think, not to do well. And I think that was part of the game that you have going on here. But there's ways to either avoid trading during these times, or there's ways to capitalize on that. There are still opportunities. It's not like there's no opportunities. There were opportunities, and there were a couple of things that kind of just didn't work. Simple as that. And there's not much you could do about it. And that's one thing that I think I've never, this is something that the only way I have learned this is by just doing it and experiencing it and seeing it enough, and then kind of seeing it enough to be like, okay, what do we do in this scenario? And sometimes there is nothing you can do outside of just the same thing you've been doing, and just let the probabilities play out over time. That's simply all you have to sometimes do. And that's what I want to talk about, because I reviewed some of these trades, and I think that it makes a lot of sense to me now. But at the same time, I've never learned this. I have been watching trading YouTube stuff for 5 years. Well, not anymore, but I used to for a long time. And this is not something that people talk about. I've never seen it. No one talks about it. Sure, someone has, but it's not very common, or it doesn't get the publicity because it's not a flashy, how much money I made, or here's how I made fucking 1,000 cents in 5 seconds, stupid shit, whatever. I could care less. I hope these videos, I honestly don't know what these videos are in terms of views. I don't hope that they get more views. I hope that they just help someone, and they can get no views, and I'll still make them because it's my log, so I don't care. But that's the thing. So that may have just blinded you because now we've gone to the white background, but let's get into it. I'll pop off the screen again. So here we go. This is custom tags. I don't want to start there. I want to start with the overview because this is where the overall stats are. So check it out. For the month of January of 2025, here are all the stats. The things that I think are interesting. Max consecutive wins and losses. It's somewhat interesting, although because we're doing the trade copier, it's tougher to say 9 losses in a row. Well, really, was it 9? Well, no, it was probably 4 or 5 because I had doubled my trades with the copier, so it's not that bad. Okay. Diving deeper, largest loss 317, 406 largest profit. Oh yeah. Also, I should say that largest losing day was nearly $1,200. This is my biggest losing day, I think, of the past 2 years. I think for sure. And the reason why that occurred is you'd say, oh, this number is terrible. What the hell? How did you blow up? Like, that was a terrible day, right? Well, no, it's because I had a couple trades open that all just so happened to close on the same day, and they all lost. I think it was 2 or 3 that I lost. All stops got hit on the same day. So that was the deal. So when you're swing trading, sometimes, in stronger or weaker markets or whatever, or when we have kind of freak days like the Fed, or not I wouldn't usually hold through the Fed depending upon the trade, I guess. I guess I did this past week because I didn't even know. I forgot the Fed was even a thing, and it didn't really matter. But if I'm holding bigger picture swings, it's not that big of a deal because my stops and take profits are so wide. It's not like we have, a lot to worry about. I would never hold through earnings, but you know what I mean? You get the point. But when you have that, like, that's possible on these like freak days where you have upside or downside moves that are crazy. It could be that all your trades get stopped out at the same time. That's why I try not to have more than 3 on at once, so you can't really hurt yourself too bad. Because once you get past that, you're like, okay, well, we can probably just consolidate into the best ones, and that's it. So that was the stats, or that was the interesting thing there. In terms of the instruments that we traded, let's just talk about this. So I want to dive into a couple of these charts. So Home Depot was the big winner, or I guess the biggest winner. It really wasn't the biggest winner. It was just a normal winner. Like, simply put, this was what I would normally expect to win on a winning trade, roughly. And we had a winning trade. The other winning trade was on the Dow, and I had a winner and a loser on gold. So I netted a plus 162 on that. And the Dow trade was net plus 253. A little bit smaller. Now, why is that sub like half the size of this one? Well, it was the Dow, and it was a day trade, so I tend to trade the day trade smaller. I don't take very many day trades, so we'll talk about those stats in a second here. So there was that. So I sized the day trade smaller than swing trades, and it also makes sense because you're going to be, trading on smaller time frames, and there's more potential volatility on that. So I don't like those as much, and my stats and data from last year told me to do that. So that's what I'm going to do. And I was only trading this was traded with $25,000, whereas the Home Depot trade was traded with about $35,000 as the account size. So technically it's going to be a smaller trade there on the US 30 as well. So that's kind of the deal there. Now, bigger picture, right? We had a winner and a loser on gold, so that's good. So we took 2 trades on gold, a winner and a loser. Great. Awesome. When you can take 2 trades, have a winner and have a loser, here it is, right down here, right? Literally a 50%. So winner, loser. The loser was 136 and the winner was 298. So when you can net profits like that, that's perfect. That's where I want to be. I want to be in that ballpark when you average things out, and that's great. So that's a good sign. The problem this month was just we had more losers than winners, clearly. Couple other things. So we had kind of battled this MS. If you go back to the past couple trade recaps, you'll see that MS, Morgan Stanley, I tried to go twice on it. It never, it technically is still looking big picture pretty healthy, but it's just not getting the momentum that I wanted to see it get. So I took 2 small losses that technically added up to 251, which is not that bad, but it just added up twice. Robinhood, we had a loss. I'm actually in an open trade on Robinhood right now that could erase and should erase all of that and more. If it works, it's either going to be a break even or it's going to go all the way. Then we had 2 things, Roblox and RL. Those are 2 trades that I think are a little bit interesting because I want to dive into both of these, because if we dive into the first one, RL, which is Ralph Lauren, who would have thought I would trade that? I have fucking no idea. It's 386. So check this out. So here's the chart. And these are 2 kind of similar situations. So I get in on the breaking candle. So I get in on this day right here. And then we end up I put the stop loss underneath it wasn't the breaking candle low, but I put the stop loss pretty much underneath this gap that we had right here. So okay, we can retest that. And if we go below that, I want to get out. And what ends up happening is we just didn't get the follow through right away. And then it kind of fell off, had this big lower wick, stopped me out, and then eventually went to the take profit. So again, this is one of those where, looking back, did I do anything wrong? I mean, you could you could say potentially, maybe you could have done something better. I don't know. The other trade that I want to dive into is Roblox. That was RL right here. Roblox, we lost 340 on. Let's talk about Roblox. So check this chart out. That's tough. Tough scenes. So I didn't bring this across to the day that I got in. I got in somewhere in one of these days as it broke above this level right here. So I entered Roblox here. I put my stop here. Let me tell you though, I legitimately got stopped out by a couple of cents, I believe. You can go back to that recap to see the specifics about that exact trade. But now looking back on the trade, right, because now we had more time. I did the recap a couple weeks ago, whatever the trade does, whatever it does. So here's one where it goes. Now, this is one where you could say, well, yes, we did break out over the horizontal level, which is what I usually wait for. But you could make the argument that there was a downtrend to be had here, and you could say that this is a bull flag situation, and we actually broke out here, so the stop loss should have been at the bottom of that breaking candle right there, which would have given me a couple more cents of leeway, which would not have hit, and then it would have closed strong, it would have stayed in, and then would have had a big push, would have got the TP. So 2 trades right there where the overarching idea ends up working out. The overarching idea ends up working out, but just the execution of it doesn't work out. And so what I wanted to get into specifically for these two, before I dive into like the time frames that work best, what I want to get into in these is that this is where, like, when I say no one talks about this stuff, because you'll have people who say, you're a dumbass, you're playing right into what the fucking, hedge funds want you to do or institutions want you to do. But the problem that I have behind that, right, is there's always a flaw. There's a flaw to everything, so it doesn't really matter. There's no right way to trade. There's no wrong way to trade. There's a million ways to trade. It's really just how you see things, then how you manage it. And if you can do it consistently with probabilities on your side, you'll make money. You're probably not going to make as much money as you think you could or that you think people are consistently doing, because they're probably not. But, whatever. You'll learn that later on down the road. I learned the hard way too. So in this situation, let's say you say, okay, well, you're playing a breakout. You should be shorting into the strength because you are going to lose. You should be shorting into the strength. And your argument is, okay, fair, because I lost the trade. So you can say, yeah, you're right. You're right for sure. But the problem is, if you short into the strength, you have to short into the strength at somewhere up in here to get a good entry. So if you don't, then what do? Let's say you wait for us to kind of push up a little bit and then start to unwind. Okay, now we're confirming we don't have the strength. If you get back in once we fail the breakout, we break out, fail the breakout, you might get back in somewhere in here. So let's just make this a little clearer. You might get back in somewhere in here as an example. You do get a nice drawdown to here, but then it snaps right back and you're wrong by a decent margin shortly after that. So who's right there? You know what I mean? Like, that's again why when I have clear strength to the upside, I do not want to short into that. I don't, from a momentum perspective. That's just how I do things. Doesn't mean that it's wrong, because there are people, if you have a strategy or a way, there's might be made on the downside here. Like, there are short trades to be made there for sure. There were short trades in here. There were short trades in here. Yes. But they are smaller than the potential longer term or than the long trades have been because of the trend we've been getting. That's why I trade the way that I trade. But you can make the argument, right, that there are absolutely flaws to that. And there always are. There is not going to be a perfect strategy. There isn't one. There's always flaws to it. And then the markets will change. The market's going to change. It's not always going to trade this way. It's not always going to do this. It's not always going to do that. So what I'm saying is that there's a reason why sometimes I tend to lean to the side of a little bit of a wider stop, but then a bigger take profit, because if this doesn't work right this second, it still gives me time with a wider stop to let this thing come down, still play within the trend, bounce, do what it's going to do, and then roll back up. And in this case, it would have worked. So that's why, like, maybe there's arguments to be had. Now, of course, in this situation specifically, I think this lower wick kind of I would have lost no matter what. It's a pretty big move down. It is what it is. But that's why I tend to try to look towards the bottom of, like, we have a consolidation phase. We break out. I usually will put my stop loss underneath the lows of that consolidation. Not all the time, but I will put my stop loss in that ballpark, and tends to be a good spot. And in the case of this situation, just big picture, like, we're swinging, step back. Like, the overall trend was there. Swing is there. It technically worked, right? So it's like, it's tough to look back at these and say, yeah, man, like, you're in the right place. Like, you're in the right place. It's not like you're completely, fucking it up and you're picking the wrong direction. So it's these little nuanced things. It's not black and white. It's not black and white, which is the interesting part of it. So, you boil it back down, you go back to here. I mean, this is sometimes it's going to happen. That's the month. It's going to be the month. That's what's going to happen. What are you going to do? You can't really you can't control when those, because there'll be a month where those trades all work. That Roblox never stops me out by a couple of cents, literally a couple cents. That Ralph Lauren play never has that big lower wick. This doesn't exist, right? and maybe we kind of consolidate here and go. This lower wick never happens. We stay in, and next thing you know, like boom, that's 2 trades. That flips you from 2 losses of 340 and 386. Now flips you to $500 gains. That's a substantial swing in P&L. Not only are you swinging back, let's call it 350 each. Not only are you swinging back $700 in losses that are no longer there, you're taking those $700 in losses, erasing them, and then adding $1,000 in profits. So you go back to the overall view and the overall thing. Now you have a green month. Those 2 trades, now you have a green month. So so when I talked about this in the past, like it's flip 1 or 2, and like it can make a big difference. That's the difference. Simply put, that's the difference. But at the same time, you can say to yourself, well, yeah, is it that big of a deal? Did I make a big mistake? No, these aren't mistakes necessarily. It's just what happens. And there will be times where it doesn't happen this way. It happens the other way, which benefits me. So you're going to have both sides, and you'll have a month where you have an 80% win rate, and you can say, oh, look at me. But in the grand scheme, 80% win rate I know is going to happen at some point because I have months where I have a 20% win rate. That's just part of the game. I've just seen it too many times, and I understand. Like, that's how the game goes. So that's the deal. Setups. In terms of setups, we had mostly played bull flag setups. Yeah, fair to the upside. Bull flag, trendline play. One was a loss, and then we had a failed breakdown. That was the Home Depot trade that made me the biggest money on the year or on the month. So I guess it is the year. So there's that. Mistakes. FOMO not to system. The one not to system was, I think, NVIDIA. That was a trade that I took. Let me pull this one up. This was a trade that we had back in. Yeah, this one kind of got the best of me because I was looking at more like this sort of situation, like kind of like the Roblox, I think. Very similar to the Roblox trade. We had a nice push up, but then we had this massive, like I could have minimized my loss by taking, like go back to that recap and you can see it. I could have minimized my loss by just taking the L here on this day, but then I let it go all the way back down and it wasn't good. Didn't need it, and it really wasn't to my system perfectly. You can look at it on the weekly time frame, looked a little bit better, but really shouldn't have taken that. So that was one that I probably could have, just kicked away and said, didn't need that. And if you get rid of that one, for example, not the system, that's $444 that you save. So that also moves the needle. Again, still not a great month, would be still red on the month, but not much at all. Would be down like, $400. Okay, big shit. That's one, winner away from being gone and being green, So that's the thing. Time frames. 1 day time frame, took 6 trades on that. That was netting me positives. We had a 5-minute time frame that netted me positives as well. So the weekly time frame did not. A couple trades on the weekly. One of those was the NVIDIA. This is something that I'll be watching and monitoring over the course of the year. These have been the time frames, the weekly and the daily and the 4-hour have been the time frames that have been very good to me last year. So, but I just don't have, compared to the 1 day, I don't have as much data on the 1 week. So as I trade that more often this year, I'm curious to see if that even evens out or if that becomes less good, less whatever. My concern with the 1 week, because here's my thoughts. My concern with the 1 week time frame is because you're going on weeklies, there's kind of a very short and narrow period of time, especially if you're trading stocks, that you can trade that because of earnings. So you usually, earnings will happen. You'll have a couple of days or a couple of weeks where let things kind of settle down. Then something will set up and you'll have a trade. But then, at that time, like you're a couple of weeks out from the next earnings. And so the trade needs time to work. And if it takes a couple of weeks to work, so now you can see like, there's a window. There's like a window in there, and it's not that large. So I'm curious to see if that plays into it and that how this year goes, playing off the weekly time frame. We'll see. Something to think about. So with that all said, that's the monthly recap. Nothing like crazy, but you can see there was the one NVIDIA trade that I didn't need to take, and then there was the 2 trades that just didn't work. Like I'm not going to go back and say I did it wrong. No, like I think my stops were fair. At the time, they just didn't look good. But what do we also see? Go back to the bigger pictures. What do we also see? Well, in the time of some of those trades not working, we had this choppy SPY. Like check this out. Like look at how the S&P has been. There are periods where it's pretty tight, pretty chill, doing its thing. Lots of ups and downs and gap ups and overnight gaps. Like, oh my God, a lot. So a lot more choppy this past month. I don't know. Was it because Trump? I have no idea. Maybe it is. I have no idea. But overall, trend still to the upside. But despite the trend to the upside, there was still some choppiness to deal with. So I think that potentially played a role into not allowing it to be super clean. it'll iron itself out. We shall see, but that's kind of the deal. So, with it all said, that's the recap for the month. I am not going to drastically change anything next month. I'm going to keep doing the same things I've been doing, and we'll see if we can have a better month than 20% win rates. But it's a good place to start, because if last year I think I averaged 40.5% win rate was my average, so we can't. I mean, if I end up nearing that spot, I mean, how much worse can it get? It could get worse. We had some stretches, but like it can't be that much worse. But I'm happy with this number for here so far. So that's the recap. I'll leave TradeZelle link down below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.